Hello, I am Captain Cass at Fort Bragg's world-famous Sea Glass Museum. I founded and operate the museum, which draws 20,000 visitors a year, one of Fort Bragg's most popular privately owned tourist attractions. Today I'm going to take you on a tour of the museum. It's COVID time, we're all locked up. It's a good chance to take a look from home. So I'm going to take you through a tour of the museum, and I'm going to explain some other things to you while I do it. Because not only do I do the museum, I'm also a cum laude graduate of the United States Merchant Marine Academy at Kings Point. I spent 27 years at sea, and I'm a published cosmologist. Now, a cosmologist is not somebody who does your nails. It's somebody who figures out how the universe works and is manifested. And I'm going to explain that to you today with some wonderful stories about sea glass. Okay? So, let's take a tour. Alright, now this is the view that I was looking at. Well, you were looking at me on the camera. I'm looking back out into the gallery area now, and the front door is over there. I'm sitting in the chair I normally sit in. Now I can't say normally because I just moved the museum from its first location, which was south of town on Highway 1. I had to move it, and fortunately when I got it just set up, and I was open for one day and had to close down because of the COVID. But this is what I see in my new seat. Those are necklaces up there. Look at close-ups later. This is just a pan to show you where I am. There's the mermaid. Over there we have a book section. Okay. Now, I should point out that Fort Bragg has the highest concentration of sea glass in the world on 3 different glass beaches and their auxiliary coves. Now, this is because, I'm going to start moving now so don't get dizzy. This is because Fort Bragg had water dump sites. Now, this is not something unusual. People think, well, how strange, they threw all their trash in the ocean. But that's not unusual at all. Everybody who lived on the water had water dump sites. It made sense in the old days. Everything was biodegradable, which meant it was bionourishing, and it all washed away. Landfills were a terrible health hazard, with rats that carried plague and other things. So if you lived on a river, a lake, an ocean, a bay. Now I'm just giving you a quick scan here of this. This is the main jewelry display in the front. And I'm going to come back and we'll look closely at that later. Just to show you what's what. And then down here at the bottom I have rocks and minerals. Now rocks and minerals are not local. Sand dollars are here, but these are not local sand dollars. Oops, sorry. But I've always had rocks in my head, so I do them as a sideline. Now we're going to come over here. I'm going to go up past the mermaid. And there's 2 photographs up there. I'm going to see if I can zoom in. Sure enough. Now, Fort Bragg had 3 dump sites because, unlike other communities where everything washed away, nothing washes away in Fort Bragg. You put it on the beach here, it stays on the beach here. Forever and ever and ever. Now, you notice this is a picture of the 1906 to 1943 dump site. That was the original town dump site. It began when they began dumping here officially at that site because the center of town was destroyed with the 1906 earthquake that destroyed San Francisco. And they bulldozed all this down there, and that became the dump site. Now if you notice on the cliff in the back, you'll see a car going off the cliff. Right, now that was that dump site in 1930. Now we just go over here to the left a little bit. This is that dump site today, Site 1. And notice the dark cliff? That's where the automobile is in the other picture. And you can see the voluminous amount of glass. Alright? Okay, now we're going to come down. Slowly. They have crosses and different jewelry. But we'll come back and look more closely at the jewelry later. So I'm going to pan around again. And then we're going to go into the museum. Now the reason the glass doesn't wash away here, that nothing washes away here, is that the rock formations in this town set up wave patterns to keep everything on the beach. Of course, they didn't know that when they put in the dumps. They expected it to wash away just like it did everywhere else. But this is why sea glass is found everywhere. Now we have directions to all the beaches here on video. We have maps and overviews of the area, tide charts, written directions, and a sign that's falling down. I'll have to get to that later. Alright, so we're panning left, and this is how you'd go into the museum from the main gallery area through these swinging doors. One of them currently is tied back. Now I'm going to pause here for just a second. So now we're going to go into the museum proper. This is coming in from the gallery. As we come on in, right to the right in front of the window, is the peculiarities display, consisting of all kinds of oddball things, like spark plugs, the antique spark plugs could be worth a lot of money, especially if they're in their original box and they're whole. These, of course, have been tumbled on the beach for decades. Oh, there's a bunch clustered together. I'm getting lazy, I guess. So we have a whole array there of spark plugs. Another cluster. And then we have bone. Lots of bone pieces. The bones come from everything from cows to lamb to sheep, and even probably some sea lions and harbor seals. When we get down to this end, we've got peach pits. And believe it or not, the peach pits make nice jewelry. If you oil them up with some tung oil or something like that. We come back, another row of bone. A little larger now. In the middle, some little bits. And we make our way over very slowly to the other side. And now we go up to the last row, where the bones are quite large. Big chunks. And actually a lot of the bones also, when they have nice coloration, can be used for jewelry. In the middle we have a little fun thing, deer teeth. Now I had a lot of teeth I found on the beach. I'll point them out as I go around. And I didn't know what they were, because teeth are very hard to figure out what they came from. There's a good Lord at have it one day who came in my museum, but the teeth guy. He was an expert on every tooth of every critter on the west coast. So he identified my teeth for me. Up here we have what they call the Star of Fort Bragg. This is a beautiful piece. This was a handmade marble that was partially melted in the fires that they put in the dumps all the time. Absolutely beautiful. And I sell things like these little bits here, a lighthouse, and lights up, and a little fountain. The water runs through. I'm going to try to pan around slowly. You can see the security gates in the front. And that's because I'm all locked up due to the COVID. I don't know when I'll be able to open it again. But I will. I should be able to weather this thing. Even if I have to be shut a year. But I doubt that. Some teeth up there, some shark's teeth. Then we'll come around here, and there's a little biography of me. I don't know if you can read that. Now here's the largest piece of sea glass ever found. It's found on Lake Erie. It weighs 275 pounds. And now it's in the Maritime Museum in Ashtabula, Ohio. And Ohio has its own sea glass festival every year too, in Ashtabula. I'm going to swing around slowly again. Don't want to make anybody dizzy. These are the front doors for the museum section. This will be the entry now during the age of COVID. Then we'll come around. I'm just going to pan to the left a little bit slowly, so you all can see the depth of the museum from the front doors. T-shirts and hoodies over there for sale. And I do artwork. Not my artwork, but I sell paintings and prints. A lot of them antique, actually. Here's another one. I like the blues in this one. And next to that, we have a poster that I photographed and then framed. And on the other side, there's also another one there. And we go over here. Sorry, I'm taking slowly. We have a lighthouse in there. Alright, now we're going to come back up slowly and pan back around. There's Capt and Teddy. He sits in my chair when I'm not here. Beautiful bell thermometer, banjo thermometer. I just love that thermometer. Okay, and over here, you'll see that handsome guy on TV is me. We run several videos in the museum. That one's an explanation about all that went on here and where the beaches came from and the history of sea glass a bit. This is a very popular poster I sell. That's the Bellum. And everybody thinks she's sinking, but she's not. She's just down in a trough. She was built in the 1800s and is still around today. She's still sailing. Then we come to our first glass display. Okay. Now this is milk glass. Milk glass comes primarily from art glass. My mother had a lot in the house when I was a kid. It was expression era glass mostly. They still sell it, still make art glass out of it. In the middle, at the bottom, we have some dark azurite. And then above that, that's the jadeite. My mother also had a lot of that. Fire King made it. And it glows under a black light. And you'll see that when we get to the black light room. Because it has uranium in it. And they put uranium in it to brighten the colors. And then in the Second World War, they needed the uranium for bombs. So in 1943, they stopped making the uranium glass. But they make it again because they don't need it anymore. They make their own stuff for bombs. And people are putting it back in glass and in artist paints, and the oil paints in particular, to brighten the colors. And they use a black light to look for repairs and forgeries of old paintings, because the new paints will glow under a black light. And what we're looking at now is the azurite. That's also an opaque blue. It was an art glass, mostly from the Depression era. Okay. Then we're going to pan up again. Around and back. Up here we'll see. I love my mermaid pictures. As you see, we have quite a bit of art on the wall for sale. Ships and bottles, ships, model ships. Some of them quite fancy and nice. And we also sell Beachcombing magazine, which is a popular magazine for us beachcomber types. But I'll move it right now so we can get to the next display case. Now this is lavender. Most lavender came from clear glass, the lighter colors, the lighter shades. And they use selenium or manganese to clarify glass because sand is amber. And if they put a little bit too much in there, then in the sunlight it turns amber, or with selenium, pink. And we say both of those are sunglasses because they'll continue to get darker through the years the more sun they get. And now we're going over to yellow. Yellow comes mostly from tableware, Depression era, and bottles, and makes up another small percentage, and some art glass. It's a beautiful color. I don't sell much jewelry in that color though. For some reason, people don't seem to want to wear it as jewelry. And next, we're going to come to the lime green. I really like the lime green. It reminds me of my mother. It was her favorite color. If she was still alive, she'd have gotten the best piece of jadeite I'd found. Next to the lime, we start to see some citron. Citron came mostly from bottles and jugs. And they were colored this way to keep the light out and protect the contents from the sun. The coloring comes from iron oxide. That's what gives the greens their color. And the iron oxide also made the glass more resistant to fracture. So they use it to strengthen the glass. But in the right combination, it was real pretty, which is the Kelly green, which is very popular for me selling as jewelry. And because it's so pretty, it was used for a lot of things, not just for shipping, but also for art glass and bottles and decorative items. So it turned out, even though it's a pretty color, to be a common color. Most of the other really pretty colors are rare. The rarest are 1 in 10,000. And that's grape purple, dark lavender, and orange. And then if I kept putting in more iron and oxide, they ended up with forest green. Alright, very dark, but very strong glass too. And as we'll see in a little bit, if they put in enough, eventually the glass turned black. Now this will look black in the video just because it's light in here. In the dark light room, I have the dark colors with lights coming up behind them in the black light room. so that you can see the colors. And now we're moving over into the next display case, and we have aqua. Aqua was very, very common. It was used for all kinds of bottles. Very, very common. In vases, all kinds of things, because it's such a beautiful little tint. Coca-Cola had several different shades of aqua in their glass and their bottle over the years. And a lot of what you're looking at right now is probably a Coke bottle at one time or another. And then next to that, we come to the aquamarine. Now the aquamarine is the most popular color I sell in jewelry. I think that's because it has both the green and the blues in it. So people who like green and blue like the aquamarine. And it was most likely coming from art glass. And the real big pieces, the real big chunks, a lot of them come from electrical insulators. The big old electrical insulators you used to see at the tops of telephone poles. And now we get to white, another one of the common colors, like green. It's about 3 to 4 pieces out of 10, just like green. And it was used, of course, for everything. And the real big pieces came from real big jugs, real big jars. And a lot of the lavender and pink started out as clear as white. And now we're coming over to the amber glass. And of course amber was used to strengthen as well. It was used for beer bottles and medicine bottles and bleach bottles, a lot of Clorox. And Clorox came in all sizes of bottles, so some of these pieces got very big and very thick. It was also used in dinnerware, but only in small amounts. Most of it during the Depression era. And now we're coming to the honey amber. I like the honey amber in particular. I don't know why, I just do. And it comes from mostly bottles. And it was used to block the light. And actually quite a bit of it also came from tableware in the Depression era. So you can see it has a pretty color. And now we come over to the fire glass. Now fire glass, and you'll see a picture later of how it's polished, what it's polished, is from the fires they used in the dumps. They burned in the dumps all the time because they didn't have more space. And so glass would melt, and different colors would melt together. Right here you have a marble, 2 marbles fused together right there. And it makes beautiful jewelry when it's right, when it's not too rough and bubbly. Okay. That's a very popular book I sell, the Sea Glass Hunter's Handbook. And now we're coming around to this cabinet. This cabinet here has the rarer pieces. They're really rare. And here we have black glass. The black glass, like I said, they use the iron oxide mostly, but some of the black glass came from other colors. Purple was one that they used a lot. I forget the mineral, I have to go look at the chart. The black glass was used in heavy containers. It was very solid. Beer bottles used to be made out of black glass so they could recycle the bottles. Now that piece right there, I call that God's sea glass. I was wondering when I was home one day if I could find a bigger piece of glass than 2 I'd found the size of my fist that used to be insulators. And I wondered what could possibly be bigger than that. And the next time I went to the beach, as wont would have it in my life, I was collecting the glass, and up high on the beach I saw this big black rock. And I thought, that looks strange, it's awful black. And I went up there, and I looked at it, and I thought, oh my God, because that's obsidian. That's volcanic glass. That's God's sea glass. And what's unusual is we don't have obsidian on the coast. This is not a volcanic area. So that piece of glass was a trade item. A coastal native traded it with a native from the Clear Lake area where there's a volcano and obsidian, and lost it on the beach. And you can imagine what his wife said that night when he got home. You see, nothing washes away here. That piece could have been on the beach for, oh, who knows, 1,000 years really. All right, and in here we have ice blue. Now, ice blue comes mostly from tableware and art glass. I am very prone to it too. I like the color, but I also like how it cleaves. If you look at the edges, you'll see it sort of has a square cleavage. It doesn't round quite like the other glass does. And below that, we have the cornflower blue. Cornflower is mostly from tableware, and usually it's pretty thin because of that. You will find some larger pieces because I did make other things out of it. For instance, this big bottle bottom here. But mostly, it was tableware in the Depression era. And here we have some small multis. They're fiberglass pieces. That are the blues. And down here we have the grape purple. Those are 1 in 10,000 pieces. In 10 years of collecting, I only found 4 pieces of grape purple. And above that, we have the orange. And reds, I'm sorry, the reds. Now those are 1 in 5,000 pieces, the reds. They're also very rare and they're highly sought after. And above that I have some little oranges, 1 in 10,000. Some multis. And some turquoise, that's 1 in 5,000 as well. Over here we have the gray, mostly from tableware. And below that, the cobalt blue, which is mostly medicine bottles. Next to that are the pinks. And above that, excuse me, some multis from England. Excuse me. Now the multis come from an art glass factory up in Seaham, England. It's a very popular spot for people to collect sea glass. Here we have whole bottles and other items. The bottles weren't found here. They were found in Tiburon and donated to the museum. Oops, I say got a poster slipping. That's a stamp press used to emboss envelopes and pieces of paper with an official seal. Some railway spikes. Perfume bottles. And over here, electrical insulators. An old axe head. And up top, Next to some of the knickknacks for sale are the lost souls of Glass Beach and a few heels. It's a nice print up there. There we come left, and there's Yule Hauser. Several videos here we run. Local art, garden art. We have lots of ships, lots of model ships for sale. And pictures of ships. And down here we have my book, Beaches of Glass, the history and tour of the beaches of glass above Fort Bragg. Sea glass identification cards. These are very popular. Very, very nice, by Sea Glass Publishing. And now we're going to pan around a little again. This is a second strike, Currier and Ives. Very, very nice. Very, very old. Alright, now let's move over here. The next set of display cases. In this one we have abalone shells. Abalone is unfortunately a very delicious creature. It's unfortunate for them, but it's not anymore really, because 3 years ago our abalone fishery collapsed here because we lost the kelp beds. And when that happened, the sea urchin filled in, because the year before we lost the starfish because of a necrosis. And it's the starfish that keep the sea urchins in check. And the following year, when we had a warm water blob come up, the kelp, which doesn't like warm water, didn't seed in heavily. And so the sea urchins, not the good kind you can eat, but the other kind, took over the seafloor, creating urchin barrens. This is a Japanese fishing float, a large one. An antique ship here. And so they're breaking up the urchin barrens now, they call them, hoping to get the kelp back. But when the kelp went, the abalone all starved to death, and we lost 7.5% of our tourist business here, because we had a lot of tourism here in the abalone seasons. And that was 2 years ago. And then last year, this is a nice picture of high wiring, how they used to get things on and off the boats that anchored offshore. And this is really quite a nice painting up here. The ocean waves. And then last year we lost another 19% of our tourist base due to the wildfires in Northern California, because 100,000 people moved out of state and we lost those people. And we thought it was getting better this year, until the Chinese decided to declare biological warfare on the rest of the planet and shut us all down with COVID. Now I should stop talking about that and talk about these. These are bottle stoppers. The ones down in front here, the little ones, are perfume bottle stoppers. I particularly like bottle stoppers because I can always picture the woman dabbing the stopper behind her ears, between her cleavage. And then above that we get larger stoppers that were used in large bar jugs and bottles. The green ones were on drinking bottles. They were held down with a wire or something until you opened it up. may have been a beer bottle. And then up at the top row, those are apothecary stoppers. They were used in the drugstores, the apothecaries, for the medicine bottles. Now I want to pan right again, because I was busy talking, and I didn't let you know that these are bottlenecks. They're fun. You can find them where they're completely round, and you can make a ring out of them. We have the books here. These are popular. Heart stones, sea glass hearts. And we'll pan around a little more up here. This is a fancy model. One of the nicer ones I sell. And this fellow, this Neptune, he's also a vintage local art, garden art. It's called brutal art, actually. And I'm going to move him aside a little bit so we can look down in here. Because here are the whole neck rings I was talking about. And then above that, we got bottle bottoms of different configurations and pieces. I like them too. They usually have a very nice shape, especially when they're whole. All right, now. In there is the blacklight room. But I'm going to wait on that for a second. And we'll go over here. This is the Sea Turtle Motel. $9.95 each. Another nice old painting. An antique painting. That one goes way back. And knot boards. Of course, Sea Glass Museum got to have some knot boards. And this is a terracotta section. And there are examples of where the terracottas came from. The plates you see on the wall, and below, the vases and bottles and whatnot. So the terracotta case, this one, the first one, this has picture pottery in it, what we call picture pottery. And it comes from pieces that were like this, decorated, glazed with designs. The picture pottery is one of my favorite things. I really enjoy it. And some of the pieces I've sold for an extraordinary amount of money. Now, Fort Bragg has 3 beaches of glass. Inside I showed you the first one, Site 1, and what it looked like in 1930, and what it looks like today. This is a very nice piece. But we have 3 beaches. And the reason we have 3 beaches is because they filled up. They ran out of space, so they had to keep moving it. The prettiest beach today is Site 2. And I'll show you a photo of that later when we go back into the gallery. Okay, that's this case. Now in this case, we have electrical insulator pieces. A lot of people find these things, they're colored like that on the beach. They have to say, what the heck is that? And they're big and they're heavy and they're thick. That's because they're from electrical insulators. And there's one that's almost whole. Now these are ceramic. It's very hard. But it makes some beautiful, beautiful pieces. So nowadays, Site 2 is our prettiest beach. Site 1 has been mostly depleted, and people who think that Glass Beach is all gone, all depleted, what they're thinking of is Site 3, because most people end up there. That's the easiest path, and that's why they go there. Now, up here, I love this little plate. Like I say, I went to sea for 27 years. So up here, I love this particular thing. I didn't want to zoom in on that. There we go. It's a classic painting by Norman Rockwell. I have a few of these in the museum, different sizes, and this one I really like because it's in color. So we're going to pan around again, slowly, not to make you dizzy. We sell sea glass calendars. They're very popular, have beautiful pictures in them. Now we come again over to this case of terracotta. Now this is all colored stuff. It's not picture pottery because it doesn't have pictures on it. Some of it's real pretty. I sell nice pieces with this too. I like the terracottas. Now the reason nothing washes away here, did I say this already? Is that the rock formations set of wave patterns that keep everything on the beach. Yes, I did say that. You're thinking right now, what are these things? These are carbon rods. They were used in carbon arc welding. And as the battery posts in dry cell batteries, you know, your A cell, your D cell, your C cell batteries. That's what those little ones are there. But large batteries too. And they were used in carbon arc lighting as well. In the mills, they had real bright lights that were carbon arc. And I'm going to pan over this way just a little bit, just to show you this table along here, some of what we have. We have ships on shelves, and there's Capt Teddy again. Alright, let's go on back now. I'm going to pause and we'll walk around to the other side. Okay, here we have some more colored pottery. And these were all kinds of things, you know, anything made out of pottery. Plates and planters and decorative items. Now I like this little piece up in here. That's an old beer bottle stopper. That may have been in one of the black glass beer bottles we talked about earlier. These here, these are electrical insulators. And then we go up over some more colored pottery. Now the Sea Glass Museum is free. I do that because I want everybody to be able to enjoy it. And some people can't afford it otherwise, so especially if they have a lot of kids and stuff like that. So what I do is I have a donation box, or boxes, and I ask people to donate. $2 a person, $1 a child, $1 for a senior. Now these are large pottery pieces. These are things like huge planter pots and things like that, in huge containers. A lot of things were shipped in huge jugs made out of pottery. Alright, so, and ceramic. So you're right, sooner or later, in the course of this tour, I'm going to put up a link. Not put up a link. I'll put in a text of the link. So you can go donate if you'd like to and help preserve the Sea Glass Museum. As you could see earlier in the video, I'm no spring chicken. So I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to open again. I hope not until they have a vaccine. I'm hoping to open before then, but really I don't want to put myself at risk, so I'm not sure. Alright, now here we go back up. There's the entrance to the blacklight room. I'm going to take you in there first, and then we have 2 more display cases in here to show you. So let's walk that way. I'll tell you what, first let's take a look at this banjo thermometer. I just love this banjo thermometer. Isn't that beautiful? I love these things. Things that tell you how the weather's going to turn. When I was a teenager, I worked on the ferries around over to Fire Island, and I was a captain on them when I was 18. Worked on them when I was in the academy. And the senior captain was a fellow named Clyde. And all us young men, we really idolized Clyde. He was quite a guy. A real man's man, and a hell of a good bayman. This is on the Great South Bay in Long Island. And there we go. Now, one of the things that amazed us about Clyde was that he'd come down on a sunny morning and he'd say, "It's going to rain this afternoon." And sure enough, it would rain. Now, this is the forest green again and the moss greens. And I have them with backlight in here. I could do the other colors in the other room, so that you can sort of get an idea about the color of them. Because really a lot of these pieces you can't tell unless you're outside holding them up to the sun. So I've always been fond of barometers, and actually when I started going to sea, that's what we relied on. It's a much smaller world than you think it is. When you're out on the ocean, if you've got a fresh wind coming up in your face, and you look over there and you see a hole in the clouds, you can steer to the other side of that hole. Ooh, I don't know, the camera doesn't like this dark. You can steer across the other side of that hole in the clouds, and the wind will be at your back. And as that wind picks up, because that's the center of a low forming, as that picks up, you can get yourself a hell of a storm, even a hurricane. And you'd be on the right side of it with the wind at your back instead of the wind in your face. Alrighty. Now we're going to come over here. Pan up there first. Somebody, alright. I'll leave it there for a second because the lights in here come up and down too. There we go. Alright. As I say, we have a lot of paintings of ships and ship models. And this is a particularly nice model. This is the Frolic. Now, in the museum, you noticed the case probably. I was speaking about something else. It said relics from the Frolic shipwreck. Well, this is a Frolic. She was a Baltimore clipper ship and sank in Casper, about 3 miles south of where I'm standing right now. And they were the first white people up here. The ship sank and they got down to San Francisco on the longboat, so there's a whole story around about that. But the relics in the other room came from this shipwreck in 1850. Now by 1851 there was a mill here, not in Fort Bragg, in Mendocino. And then within a year another one. The whole coast, every little stream entering the ocean had a mill on it. Now this was made, this nice model was made by this woman in her 70s. She took up shipbuilding, model building in her 70s, and she built a whole lot of them. And this was one of the last. And her daughter donated it to the museum. If I had my glasses on, I could read her name, but I'm sorry I don't, so. You probably could. And now, these are, and here, these are ambers. Let's move the ship. This is a nice little ship. It has lights. Very old. Again, we have lights come up. See, now here the ambers are even easier to see through than the greens. Just above this display is a photograph that you'll find in my book of a captain and his family coming ashore on the high wire back in the 1800s. Whoops, my batteries are getting low, folks. So I'm going to do this case and stop it for a minute and change batteries. You'll notice I have a penchant for mermaids, so we'll leave it there with her. Okay, we're back. There's our mermaid girl. You know, all us seamen, all us sailors, been to sea all those years, we know where the Mermaid Island is, but we're not allowed to tell. Skin us alive if we tell you. Now, what do you think of this? We've got some glare behind. Let's see. This is the black light room. Oh, that's why. Look at this. Isn't that amazing? Looks like stars and galaxies. This is one of the most popular aspects of the museum. People love this room. Look at this beautiful piece. The glare. I keep you out of the glare. Now most of this is Fire King jadeite that we saw in the other rooms. I'm going to pan around here a minute. Very easily. Pure sea glass is the Bible of sea glass. Peoples. And here's another case. And most of it came from Fire King. Now isn't that just one of the most beautiful things you ever did see? Now my mother loved jadeite, as I said in the other room. When I was 16, my sister was 18, and some of the Vaseline glass, anything that glows under a black light we call Vaseline glass. And some of it's red, some of it are aquas in here. You can't tell without turning the lights out. Now most of it's the Fire King. And when I was 16, my sister 18, my parents thought we were mature enough that they could leave us and take a vacation down in Florida, and we'd be okay. I guess they forgot what it was to be a teenager. So anyway, I had my girlfriend over one day. Oops, looks like we're getting glare again. And my mother had a lamp that had a jadeite lampshade. It wasn't Fire King. But it was like an oil lamp, like a dome lampshade that fit in a ring, and it had a hole in the top like there was a, a oil lamp in it. And I was wrestling with my girlfriend on the couch, and I broke that lampshade. And I said, oh boy. And I ran into town and went to the lamp store, and sure enough, they had one. Just one, only one, but they had one. And I was an old lady that bought it, and I went home, and I put it on the lamp, and I couldn't see why it was just off so small amount it wouldn't fit in the brass ring. It just would not go in. I couldn't see why. And I left it. Years later, I told my mother that story, and she said, you know, that lamp drove me crazy for years. She said, I knew that used to work. It used to fit, and all of a sudden it wouldn't. So there you have the black light room. Here's a nice little lighthouse I'm going to sell. Like I say, we have all kinds of things. Nautical decor. And there you have it. Now this little video over here on this TV, that's the Frolic. That's the Frolic wreck site. I show this as a History Channel piece. But it's wrong. They say he lied where it sank. He didn't even see it sink. They all took off. They're trying to make themselves important, these marine archaeologists. They really don't know what the boat did, and I do. Anyway, I show it anyhow, even though I sent one of the archaeologists a reprimand, say, for insinuating the man was dishonest when he was a well-respected man in his day. He was the same captain as in Richard Henry Dana's 2 years before the mast. That's a clipper. That's the same as the Frolic was. And then here I also have, you may have noticed, our old friend by Norman Rockwell. This one was a puzzle that somebody put together and framed. Alright, it's time to move on. So we're back in the other room where the big display cases are I took you through. And there's 2 more display cases in this side. We're going to cover them. So this case has mostly handle pieces, but other things. Right below what you're looking at, in that little shot glass, and that little photo, that's glass from Kauai's Glass Beach in Hawaii. It was donated by Laura Sue from Ventura, a friend of the museum. Now she has a very fascinating story. I'm going to tell it to you right now, because it gets us started into the cosmology and all that. We all know what a coincidence is. Coincidence is a coincidence. But sometimes a coincidence is much more important. It's too coincidental to be mere coincidence. And we call those occasions synchronicities, where 2 people's lives are in sync for a period of time. So, I'm going to tell you Laura Sue's story. Alright, now these are handle pieces, as I said. And up here in the corner there's a little pink medicine measuring cup we used to use, or they used to use in the old days. So, Laura Sue came back last year and she was all excited, and she said, I've been waiting to come and see you because I wanted to tell you about a synchronicity I had. Because I had told her about synchronicities before, and you know, she understood and really enjoyed it. So, she said, a friend found a piece of glass on the beach that had my father's birth date on the bottom of it. Not a piece of glass, a piece of pottery. It was the exact date, day, month, and year. So the friend gave it to her, and she sent it to another friend who was into antique pottery and asked her if she could figure out where it came from. And sure enough, she could. Now, just for a second here, this is a Japanese float. It's a barrel float for the nets. And over here is one of the glass fishing nose for the nets, and that's slid over. I should have straightened that out before I started filming. Alright, so it came from Pennsylvania, a town in Pennsylvania that both her father and grandfather had lived in. And it was a mustache cup bottom. It was the bottom of a mustache cup, which I guess you'll know is used for shaving, was in the old days. And it was made, the mustache cup was made for a specific regiment in the army that both her father and grandfather had served in. Oh, isn't this incredible? On top of that, her grandfather had once worked in the factory that made the cup. Now, these are synchronicities. And synchronicities show us that our lives are harmonized together. Right? There's a magic in the world. It's right there all the time. We just don't see it. I'm going to go on about that in a minute some more. But right now we're going to move on to the next case. Okay. Now these are all special items. I have marbles and all kinds of things. So we'll just go through this case slowly. Alright, now along the top, I'm going to go along the top first because we have the marbles. And you notice there's little tags on the marbles that say where they came from. What era they came from and all of that. Now I want to give a shout out to James, our friend James, who was a local architect. And he wrote a book. He went through all the beaches of glass and the older sites where people were throwing things before just randomly, And he cataloged all of that stuff for me, and he made the tags in the picture pottery display. And the reason I want to mention James is because we lost James last year to cancer, sadly. He was a nice fella, did this stuff for me. And I'm going to be showing you later a picture in his book. He had 2 books he wrote. Well, he wrote one, and then his family finished the one he was working on when he passed away. Now those little beads, right? You see those little glass beads in there? And the real tiny ones are from fishing lures. And the other ones are just beads we use for this and that. Now right here, this is one of my favorite finds. It's a sperm whale tooth. Isn't that something? That made my month, I'll tell you that. And over here we've got some ingots of metal and glass from other places. This is from Benicia, somebody donated. And this came all the way from New Brunswick, Canada. Somebody brought to me. And that person's important too, because I shared a synchronicity with her. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, because there's a synchronicity piece in this case. Now, these are little pieces of aluminum that melted down in the fires. And here's iron ingots. The first one I found of those I thought was a meteorite. All excited. But if you look at little pits on it, you see little glass inside of it, in little pits. Okay, we'll move back across. These are the tops, the round things, are the tops of apothecary stoppers. This one here is bone and glass fused together in the pliers. This is the synchronicity piece. Now I'm going to talk to you about that a little more in a minute. We'll come back to that. So let's go on down again. Got a little crochet needle. Some more apothecary stopper tops. This piece here, this came from the Frolic. I found this on Frolic Cove. It was a piece of the pottery the crew used on ship. It came out of England. It was a small bowl they put oil in which to dip their bread at dinner and meals. They didn't use butter aboard ship. They used oil. And we're going to come over here. And these are some Native American tools. I had to pause for a minute to clear my throat. I'll be right back. Okay. Now, the Native American tools are made out of the local chert. When that's green, we call it California jade, even though it's not jade. And when it's brown or reddish, we call it jasper, but it's not jasper. Okay, now we move over here. This is blue willow, that pottery. Blue willow is very popular to find, very popular. They started making it in 1790, and they still make the pattern today. It wasn't made in the Orient. It's a story of the pottery, the story that had the pictures in the pottery tell a story of Romeo and Juliet kind of couple. But it was invented in England, and they just came up with that to explain the history of it. And I have to stop again. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Of course, you don't notice it. It's only got a minute for you, a second. Now over here is reds, orange, and turquoise, very rare colors. The red and turquoise are 1 in 5,000, and the orange is 1 in 10,000, one of the rarest colors. And 90% of the reds come from the taillights of old automobiles, and 90% of the orange from the turn signals of old automobiles. Okay. There's some little specialties in here. This is a Thule elk tooth. That's 2,000 years old. It went extinct here on the coast 2,000 years ago. And I mentioned my tooth guy later. He told me that. This little piece says magic on it, the magic sea glass. And the ice sea glass says ice on it. the green and red, and when you hold it up to the light and it comes through, the red turns yellow. When the colors blend, and where's the seawater? Oh, I don't know if you notice these, but they have seawater trapped inside of them, which is really cool. It's the only two pieces I found like that. Alright, now, well, since we're talking about teeth, I want to come up here for a minute. I'm going to scan up and over again so I don't get dizzy. And up above these glass displays, where we have the terracottas, the big pieces and chunks and hunks and bricks and all kinds of things. Old toys. Insulator there, another insulator piece there. Bottles, the little bottles are what things used to come from. A lot of little bottles up here. A very old woman from Willits, the town of Willits, came over one day and she was cleaning stuff out and wanted to sell some old bottles, and I bought them from her. That big crackled thing, that's actually styrofoam. It's a fishing float for a net. And then we come down the next shelf, and you'll see a bunch more little bottles. The things used to come in. The blue bottles are mostly medicine. Pepto-Bismol, Phillips Milk and Magnesia. There was an eye cup that was blue. There's little Phillips. And then little perfume bottles too. Now the reason I wanted to come over here now, though, was because back here in the middle of this, you'll see this. Now when I found that, I really hoped it was the proverbial jawbone of an ass. But you try to figure out any equine's teeth, it'll drive you crazy. You don't know unless you're an expert. And fortunately, my teeth guy came in, and he identified that for me and confirmed it was the jawbone of an ass. Alright, we pan back around over here. And we're going to come back to our synchronicity piece in this display case here. Alright, now this is the atom pattern. Jeanette Glass made it, I think that's correct, Jeanette, between 1932 and 1934. If you look on it, you'll see there's a rose. See the rose on the rose-colored glass? Right after I started this, within the first week or so, I used to sell down at the beach. That's how I started, and I was sitting along the path reading the Da Vinci Code, which was a very popular book at the time. And it's a book about symbols. And the main symbol of the book is this rose you see on this piece of glass, the antique rose. It repeats itself over and over again throughout the book. And I just read, the rose is synonymous with the Grail. And the Grail is the Holy Grail. And which in this book happens to be a descendant of Jesus. Anyway, so I was thinking about that. I had the book in my lap and I was looking up and thinking about it. And a woman walked up to me and she says, "Is it normal to find rose-colored glass?" And I said, "No." I said, "It's very rare. I mean, I just started, so I hadn't found any rose-colored glass at all yet. And I only found the first beach, and a lot of my pieces were even chipped and things." And she said, "Well, I found a piece," and she reached in her pocket, and I thought she was going to pull out a little tiny piece of glass. Instead, she pulled out this beautiful piece with the rose that I'm looking at in the book. And I showed her that. And she said, "Oh," she said, "you have to have this piece of glass." I said, "No, I can't take that." She says, oh yes, no, you have to have this piece of glass. So I took it from her. And I think I got it so I could tell you that story. Now, I'm pretty sure the woman came from Santa Rosa, St. Rose. Now, isn't that a synchronicity story for you, or what? Not as good as the birthday with the father, but that's a good tale. All right, now I'm going to stop for a second. We're going to move to the other room. Okay, to give you some perspective, we're back in the other room where we first went into the museum. I have a couple little pamphlets here that I sell. History of Glass Beach and the Wreck of the Frolic. Saying what really happened, not what they say happened. So I'm going to give you a tour of the gallery a little closer up. These are some earrings I sell, caged little pieces. They're very popular. I call that the wild sea glass. You've got to keep it caged up or it'll get away from you. And over here I sell these. These are my Symbol of Unity. You can go online to my Symbol of Unity site, capcast.com/symbolofunity.htm, and you can read all about a deeper level what I'm going to tell you today about synchronicities in life and the world. And that's little medallions I made that I sell for that. Here are the 5 most frequently asked questions. Now I'm going to pan there slowly so that if you want you can freeze frame it and read it in detail at your own pace. And we come up to the other side. There you go, okay. So these Mendo maps are very popular. The fellow who makes them, George, he used to work for Disney. You can see the influence in it. He's a very talented sculptor too. And he makes life-size animatronics. So if you want a full-sized elephant walking around your yard, he'll make you one. And again, over here, I showed you the directions, and I sell note cards, sea glass note cards by Sea Glass Publishing too. Very nice and popular. Some abalone jewelry there. Necklaces. And over here we have the directions again. Now this is a picture of Site 2, the prettiest beach. This is a fairly high tide. This is about a 4-foot tide, I guess, there. And there used to be steps going down. That was on a Memorial Day recently. And they took the steps out because they put in illegal steps and people got seriously injured. They said they took them out because the bottom steps washed away, but that's not why. Somebody got seriously injured, broke their leg. Now I mentioned James inside. Here's just a general overview that I did of the 3 main beach areas. Okay, showing where the 3 sites are, Site 1, Site 2, and Site 3. But James went much farther than that. James Marino. This is out of his book. He started out at Soldiers Bay, which is Fort Bragg Landing, and went all the way north. And he dated all the materials he found in each of the coves. And like I said, we're going to be looking in James's book later. I want to show you what he did with the fire glass, which is just amazing. I'm going to zoom out here so we don't get all dizzies. Here are the front doors again. And you come in, you see this. Oh, I didn't turn on the flashing lights, but these lights flash on the sign. And believe it or not, even with flashing lights, people don't see the sign. My daughter points out the signs are only for people who like to read signs. We come around over here. We have this handsome fellow in the mirror. Very dashing. We have postcards. This is site 1, the top one. The bottom one is site 2, the middle one. And the bottom one is site 1. And I have my note cards. And again, the sea glass ID cards. Note cards. Now this is very popular here. This is seed glass. It's landscaping glass I sell to people to put on the beach so they can replenish what they take. It's a very popular item. And I sell faux sea glass. We don't sell the real sea glass in bulk because it's too valuable. And down below, we have bumper stickers. Oval bumper stickers, and my Super Sea Glass bumper stickers, and my Symbol of Unity bumper stickers. Then we walk around to the other side. And we have ships of all sorts. Start at the top. That's a Mayflower. And we have a little welcome lady. Ships and bottles. They're very popular. This one's made out of horn from a water buffalo. And little ships and bottles. And these are special edition. These little guys here, they're very, very detailed and very fragile and nice. That's the Constitution. And that's Queen Anne's galley. That's a pirate ship. Blackbeard ship. And more ships in the bottom. And we'll pan around over here, go slowly past the doors again. Here's my little bragging section. Let's start at the top. That's a picture of me down at the beach with Girl, one of my little squirrel buddies. Girl is so tame she let me pet her. I knew her for 3 years. I had a lot of buddies down at the beach. I got this award at my last reunion at Kings Point, a Silver Mariners Award for my successful career at sea. Now, the way captains tell a successful career is if your number of arrivals equal your number of departures. If they don't, I guess you weren't very successful. And there's my biography again. Let's see, I'll get a little closer. I don't know how that'll turn up for you. But if you want to read it, you can read it. Freeze frame it and scan it. And people say, why are you a captain? This was my last command. I commanded 3 ships over 14 years of the 27 I went to sea. This is the SS Green Valley. She was as big as an aircraft carrier, as big as a Midway. She was 900 feet long. And you can read what's there, but I carried 38,000 tons of ammunition, which was 1 month's supply for 1 division of Marines in the Persian Gulf. A lot of boom boom. And that picture was taken in Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, where the Rapid Deployment Force is. I was part of that force, the Rapid Deployment Force. In case trouble brewed up in the Persian Gulf, we'd steam up there. And we have a little collection sacks for people. It is perfectly legal to collect. I explain all that in the museum and in the frequently asked questions that I scanned earlier. So you can read that at your own leisure, but it has to do with the state constitution. And your rights. You ought to know that most of the things people you can't do, tell you you can't do on beaches, you actually can. Because it has to be against state law to be against the law on a beach. It doesn't matter what city or county or other entity says. It's state law that applies. No beach is in any park. The parks end, the counties end, everything ends at the mean high water mark in California and in most other states, although some may have a slightly different criteria. But the beaches everywhere belong to the people. And the only place you can't collect glass that I know of in the United States are the islands in Boston Harbor that used to be Revolutionary War forts. And the reason is because they are actual archaeological sites. But anywhere else you find sea glass is just considered refuse, and you can take it. Even in the Mediterranean, like in Israel and Ashdod, they collect Roman sea glass. And that's perfectly legal because it was just a dump site. Just like here in Fort Bragg. Now here in Fort Bragg, the rangers, I got them to back off. They were saying the beach was in the park, and I forced that issue. The city went so far as to ticket some people, which was horrible. They ticketed them, they sent an armed force onto the beach when they opened the coastal trail, and that became part of the city park. And they said, we own the beaches. And they sent an armed force on the beach. They searched people, the armed force being the police, which is very intimidating. They searched people, had them empty their pockets, their bags, whatever they had. And if they found any sea glass, they ticketed them $500 for theft. Now, who wants a theft on their, no matter how big, on their record? It's ridiculous. And one of the first women ticketed, she was so upset. She came in, she says, I can't do this. I'm going to lose my job. She said, I can't have a ticket for theft. She said, I work for the Stockton Police Department. She said, I'm going to lose my job. I said, you're not going to lose your job. I said, you didn't steal anything. It's perfectly legal. And I explained the legalities to her, and she got herself a friend of hers who was a lawyer, and they just wrote out an appeal to the court based upon that. And the judge threw it out and gave her her money back. And he told the city, he said, don't be sending people here. You don't have any jurisdiction down there. So they stopped the ticketing, and then they had to say, okay, yeah, actually it's not part of the city. And on MendocinoTV.com, there's an interview with the then Community Development Coordinator for the city and the head park ranger. And they admit, yeah, it's not their land, it's public trust land, it belongs to the people. Then the ranger says, but it's illegal to take anything archaeological from public trust land. And since it's more than 50 years old, it's archaeological, so you can't take it. Now, he being the head ranger knows this is absolutely not true. If he doesn't know the law, he shouldn't be the head ranger. But he knows. He just doesn't want people taking the glass, and so he's lying to people and intimidating people. And occasionally some of his rangers, if they get a new one, will go down there and search people. And every time I get a report of that, I call him up and chew him out about it, and it stops. Because it's not archaeological. In California, something has to be 100 years old to be archaeological. And in California, it also has, well, everywhere, it also has to be tied to a significant person or event, or it'll never be archaeological. And dump sites are never archaeological, and I know this because I've talked to archaeologists about it, and they say, no, it's just a dump site. So, we're looking at now is faux sea glass. This is the best faux sea glass I've seen. The woman who makes this actually collects things that people had actually used, and she tumbles it and then acid etches it to make it look like sea glass. It's actually more like beach glass because doesn't have the smoothness of sea glass. It gets tumbled all the time. But it's really very nice. And there's a lot of Vaseline glass in there. Like I say, they're using Vaseline glass again. And I have some faux sea glass jewelry here that's very inexpensive for people who don't care if it's real or not. And here's some other faux sea glass I sell. This comes out of China. I think it's COVID free. And I have my little turtles. Turtles are popular, and I like the turtles too. And I have brassware that I sell. And over here we have the magnets. Picture magnets. And other items, and pens, and keychains, little knives. And the same on the other side. Big knives, more keychains. Here's a picture of Site 2. I say that's our prettiest site these days. And I'll pull out a little bit here to move up. There's some more little turtles on here. Turtles are popular guys. And little gem dolphins and turtles. Little pelicans, shell critters. There's anything up on this shelf. And on this shelf we also have gemstone trees. Those come out of Brazil or India. I love my gemstone trees. I used to be able to get larger ones out of Brazil that were really beautiful until their economy collapsed in 2008 and my supplier went out of business, which was a shame. I'll come back across again. Not too fast. Now, this is a lovely little picture here. So the old story was that sea glass was mermaid tears, that every time a sailor was lost at sea, the mermaids would cry. Sea glass is their tears that washed up on the beach. And up above that I have a big shell. I sell a few shells, as you saw earlier in the video. Some other kinds of knickknacks. I sell a lot of little mermaids. All kinds of little mermaids, sitting mermaids and laying down mermaids and all kinds of mermaids. The big lamp though, big mermaid lamp, that's not for sale. That's for me. And we come down again. Onto this shelf, and like I say, I have some pretty shells that I sell. That's a blue abalone, comes out of Australia or New Zealand. You know, this is all polished. Seashells, the dust from seashells, all seashells, is highly carcinogenic. Seashells themselves are safe, but if you're going to drill them or sand them, you have to do it underwater so there's no dust. And when you get finished, you have to clean it all up so there's no dust when it dries up. Because just a little bit of that in your lungs will give you lung cancer. There's no market in the red abalone on the north coast in California at all. Because they don't want to encourage poachers, so you can't sell the shells or can't break the shells up, make things out of them and sell them. But the Native Americans can't. And we had a fella from Point Arena, oh, I don't know how many years ago now, I knew John, probably 15, 14. And poor John, he worked the abalone and he didn't know about it. He ended up with cancer and we lost John. Some more rocks. Like I say, I've always had rocks in my head, so I like to do them as a sideline. I just like to have them around. And more shells, more fishes and things. And down below on that shelf we have the large books. I don't fit on the regular bookshelves, like this one in here. There's my hero Einstein, except I figured out what Einstein couldn't. My new model of the universe forms the basis of volume 27 in the Journal of Cosmology. And it completes relativity. So that we don't have any more singularities, no more big bangs, no more dark matter, no more dark energy. My daughter gave me this when I was working on it. She said, "Daddy, that's you." See if I can get down where you can read the text. And what I figured out, finally had an inspiration. And I've studied quantum physics and I've studied relativity and all this stuff. All my life I've been following this, trying to figure out what was wrong with science, because everybody knows the singularities and all of that make no sense at all. That the universe shouldn't be expanding. And I'm going to tell you what happened. Way back when, now these are nice pieces of art. I want to show you this. I didn't focus on those. But there's a fellow down in San Diego who makes these pieces here. That's all sea glass put together. Very, very nifty. And he drove them all the way up here so I could try to sell them in the Sea Glass Museum. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what the universe is. We begin with space-time. Alright? Space and time. But it's not space and time. It's space-time. Two aspects of the same thing. Now, I'm going to pause for a second because I'm going to show you what space is. This is space. Just empty, nothing, dark void. Alright, now time is evolving space forward. As time passes, the space evolves forward. And the events embedded in the space evolve forward. Alright, now you and I are evolving forward as I'm talking to you. Now we have puzzles. This is a picture of Site 2. It's my best shot, and I made a puzzle out of it. And this is just for people who like really, really, really hard puzzles. And time evolves space forward. So we're evolving forward as I talk to you. And you say, well, okay, well, what direction is forward? Well, it's the forward direction of time. And time has no depth. And that means that even though we perceive the three dimensions, they don't really exist in depth. It's just an evolving energy field that appears dimensional to the critters and beings within it. But everything is just evolving forward with time. An evolving energy field. That's the quantum field. Space-time. Now, I should tell you, this is a photograph of Site 1, the original site. You can see the little seagull there, the baby. That's because the gulls nest on all these islands out there. I had a lot of seagull buddies eat out of my hand. And this is Site 2 again, as I pointed out before. So, where was I? So what we're really seeing when we look at all these things we're looking at, this is the Bible, pure sea glass. If you want a best book on sea glass, that's it. Richard Lamott. Award-winning book. And what you're looking at are events in space-time. There are no solid particles, just evolving events. Just little sparks of energy evolving forward all the time. Evolving forward in the forward direction of time. And that's why Einstein could use time as a dimension in his equations. I won't go too deeply in that. I don't want to get your head all messed up. Space-time can twist your head around. Alright, so believe it or not, time doesn't pass at the same rate everywhere. At the top of Mount Everest, time is going faster than at the bottom of Mount Everest. Time is going faster at the top of your head than it is at your feet. And there's reasons for this, but we won't get into that. And we call that a time dilation gradient, where time is going faster at one end than the other. And when we do that, when we put a time dilation gradient there, what we find is at the faster end, space has to shrink so that the speed of light is maintained, because that's a constant. Here's a book by James. I'm going to show you that in a minute when I finish what I'm telling you. And not only that, but any photons of energy, any little light particles that are in that area, they increase in frequency relative to the ones at the slower end. And that means that they have higher energy, because energy relates directly to frequency when it comes to light. So that means at the higher end, you get a density forms. And because time appears to be going faster there, the next instant seems to manifest first there. And the events there evolve down that gradient, that time dilation gradient, from your head to your toe. And that's what gravity is. That's why it overpowers all the other forces so easily, and why it only has one direction. It's an irresistible evolutionary force in time. All right, now I'm going to take a break, and we're going to look at James's book for a minute. He did too. He did Fire Glass and Glass Beach. That's the one the map came out of I showed you. The Fire Glass, this one, he was working on when he passed away. And what he did with the Fire Glass was he polished it. There's a photo of James on the beaches he loved. And what he found inside the Fire Glass was this. These worlds of bubbles. Beautiful, beautiful bubbles. So he polished the glass down on the outside with regular stone polishing equipment. And he selected certain pieces that he knew would have good color. And then he filmed them from the outside and the inside. His family completed this book for him after he passed away. I think it's just a wonderful book. It makes me want to polish glass. Alright, so when we get an evolution down the gradient, the time dilation gradient of that little density at the top, well, that motion is kinetic energy. So we get the potential energy of the space-time continuum becoming kinetic energy. And then in a spherical dilation gradient, like a pit, like a sun, when those evolutions reach the center, they have nowhere to go. The focus. And so you get heat, you get pressure, and you get thermal energy from the kinetic energy. And then after that, you get the universe, all the things. And when the forward direction of time impedes at that focus, it splinters off in two basic primary different directions. This direction and that. That's all it is. You can't say it's this or that. It's just this one and the opposite. And that forms the two fundamental particles, electrons and quarks. And everything else is built upon those two events, those forward directions of time. Evolutions in time. Not a particle. It's a happening. It's just going on all the time. And everything we see is made up of those particles. This is a beautiful piece of abalone. You're allowed to sell abalone if it's ocean washed, if the rangers can tell that you didn't break it out of a fresh shell. Technically it's illegal, but they allow it. This is a dark lavender. That's 1 in 10,000 pieces. One of the rarest colors. And my other little mermaid. Now, the thing of it is, though, in the quantum world, in quantum physics, we know that it's all just evolving all the time. Now, I want to stop for a second. You see the two big pieces in here that have the bracelets on them? Those were electrical insulator pieces, and it was those pieces I was wondering about the day before I found a piece of God's sea glass, a piece of obsidian. This is a beautiful piece. This is amberina. Most of it was Depression era glass. Very rare, very beautiful. Alright, I'm going to take a pause. It's time for me to have lunch. So I'll leave you with the amberina for a few minutes. You won't even notice I'm gone. Now, I think this is one of my prettiest displays, if not the prettiest. It's my favorite. I guess I gotta say it's the prettiest. And that's because it has so many different things in it, so many beautiful pieces of all the colors, you know, the yellows and the greens and the blues and interesting things. For instance, this little one over here, that's the bottom of a bottle. And there are other bottle bottoms in here, partial bottle bottoms. Come over here, there's a well-frosted bottle neck. That's just beautiful. Another piece of blue, it's a bottle bottom. I don't have my glasses on at the moment, so I can't read them. And that big green one, that's also a bottle bottom. I'm down to my last set of the cornflower blue. Everything else in here, all the other sets, you can buy a bracelet, or you can buy the earrings, or you can buy the necklace. But I'm down to my last set of cornflower blue and of cobalt blue. Somebody may bring me some pieces to buy one day so I can make another. But at the moment, it's not possible. So I'm only selling those two. You'll see the cobalt blue in a minute as sets. I don't want to break them up. There's the cobalt there. Now I want you to look at just how tiny abalone shells start out. And believe it or not, they start even tinier than that. It's a wonderful world. And did you know that in those abalone shells, and in all the shells you see here, there's a recurring pattern on which they're built that's common all throughout the universe. It's called the golden ratio. Now, we have what they call Fibonacci sequence, which is just if you take 0 and 1 and add them together, you get 1. And then you add 1 and 1 together and you get 2. And then you add 2 and 1 together and you get 3. And then you add 3 and 2 together and you get 5. And 5 and 3 are 8. Right? You see the pattern? You add the one number to the preceding one to get the new one. And when you do that, here's an interesting, that's a Phillips bottle bottom. And these other bottle bottoms, these came out of California. They were made in other towns. I think that was in Salinas. Oops, that one there. And this is interesting. That's a doorknob. And the treasure chest. Every treasure needs a chest. So I'm going to focus on that for a second. So, when you have that, when you add 2 to 1 to get 3, and 3 to 2 to get 5, and 5 and 3 to get 8, and 8 and 5 to get 13, when you divide the one number, the sums of those, one after the other, you divide the one number into the next number, you get a sequence. And it's a golden ratio. It's 1 point something or other. You can just Google the golden ratio. And it is in everything we see. It repeats itself over and over and over again. Everything is built on the golden ratio, which is numbers. So much of the universe is built on numbers. Okay, so let's move around to the back. Hold on, and I'll be right back. Alright, so I won't go any more with the numbers. I'll just tell you the numbers are a lot of fun. That's one of the beautiful ones, so the golden ratio. Look it up, it will amaze you. So I'm going to take you down here now and show you some of the jewelry a little more close up. I make these little crosses, that's all sea glass. And this is hemalike. It's a man-made hematite that I put the sea glass on. We got the Little Mermaid, so always got my Little Mermaid somewhere. And these are with the Big Mermaid. So many people have tried to buy her. And I can't get another one, so I said, no, that's mine. Practically everything in here I pass on sooner or later. There's a few things I keep. But now I'm going to tell you about the simple magic of the world. You see what we're looking at? We're looking outside, always looking out. Well, that means because it takes light time to travel from there to here, that everything has already happened before you experience it. In other words, the world has been manifested first for you so you can experience it. If that wasn't happening, you couldn't experience it. I don't know how good the light is going to be in here. Let's see, I think I'm blocking one behind me. Let me try stepping this way a little bit. There we go, that's better. So no matter how far away you're looking, hold your finger up to your eye. Your finger has already happened. And when you look out, the farther away you look, you're looking farther and farther back in time. Always farther and farther back in time. And when you get out to the cosmological horizon, which is the farthest you can see in the universe, you're at 13.9 billion years ago. Now, science has been on the wrong track since Einstein and a man named Hubble. Hubble was an astronomer, and he was looking out into space at the time Einstein was coming up with his theory of relativity. And Einstein was trying to find a cosmological constant to his equation that would prevent big bangs and big expansion, infinite expansions and all these things that don't make any sense. He was trying to make it so the equation was just balanced and it was an eternal universe. Who's that handsome guy? Alright, but old Hubble, good old Hubble, he was looking out through his telescope far, far, far out into space. And what he noticed was that everything looked redder the farther away it was. And to a scientist, that means things are traveling away from us at a faster and faster speed. The universe looked like it was accelerating at an increasing velocity and just going crazy to where it was going at the speed of light at the cosmological horizon and beyond it. They figured it had to go beyond the speed of light, and that's impossible according to Einstein. So he said, well, it's not going. It's what's happening is the space is expanding. It's not everything's moving through space. The space itself is expanding. So they aren't going faster than the speed of light. They just look that way because they're embedded in this space that's expanding. And then what do you get? They say, well, it's got to be a dark energy. And by dark they mean we don't know what the hell it is. It's dark. We can't tell. We can't see it. We can't measure it. We just think it's there. So we've been on the wrong track ever since then. Because Hubble looked at it. Everybody looked at it, really. I mean, they tried all kinds of theories. They said, oh, well, maybe it's tired light. Maybe light gets tired older in time. And they did experiments and they found out, no, that's not true. So finally, they just had to accept the fact that the universe was expanding away at a faster and faster rate of time. There's a nice jadeite. Well, everybody's been looking for dark energy ever since. And because of that, they said, well, if that's what's going on, then the universe had to begin as a singularity. Everything in the universe had to be in a little small tiny speck of a spot, and then it blew up faster than the speed of light into the universe. And of course this makes no sense at all, because what would be outside that speck? It would be space. Well, the universe is space and time. By definition, the universe is eternal. You cannot perceive it any other way. It's infinite and eternal. Oops, I'm not doing too well on that one. So this is why I have been trying to figure it out my whole life, why we could explain how we could explain that differently, that singularities don't exist. No big bangs, etc. And about, I don't know, I think 6 years ago now, I had a revelation one day, thinking about gravity and the forward direction of time, which at one point way back when I'd read that gravity is the curvature in the forward direction of time, and I always pondered on that, trying to puzzle that out in my head, what that looked like. And one day I had an inspiration, and I realized I was actually looking at the quantum field. It's space-time, you know. So when something is falling through space, like it does in a gravity field, it's not falling through space. It's evolving down the time dilation gradient in the continuum, in the space-time continuum. So, now I'm going to tell you some quantum tales. Let's see. Well, first let me tell you this. What was wrong back then, what they got wrong, that Einstein missed, that they all missed, is that there's two ways of looking at that red shift. Everybody was looking at it like it's an acceleration through space, away from us, because people see things moving through space instead of evolving down dilation gradients, as I just said. So the other way to look at it is it's an acceleration in time within us. Life, the living, is an acceleration in time of 2 billionths of a billionth of a second per second. That would also create the red shift that we see happening out in space, Hubble shift. Now when you take that acceleration and you add it to Einstein's equation, you find the constant he was looking for. And what you end up with is a stable, eternal, evolving energy field, the space-time continuum. And what's happening is when we look out far into space and we see the cosmological horizon, and time is not older just, it is slower and slower and slower until time appears to stop. And that happens at 13.9 billion light years away at the cosmological horizon. And that's why things appear to be accelerating at the speed of light there. Because when things appear to be accelerating at the speed of light, time appears to stop there. So it's just a matter of looking at it a different way. that completes relativity. And what that also means is this. As we're staring out into space out there, when we see a horizon where time appears to stop. Now, if you approach that horizon, it would recede and you see older and older galaxies. There's no limit. It's just that time appears to stop there for us. That's our limit of relativity. Now, when we look into a galaxy, at the center of a galaxy, there's a black hole. And a black hole is actually a MECO. It's a magnetic, eternally collapsing object. And the center of it is empty space. Now, an astrophysicist, Rudolf Schild, led a team in 2006 to prove this. They could actually see the black hole because they lensed the light around a passing galaxy that was passing in front of the black hole galaxy. Right? And so, if you approached that, where at that time appears to stop, at that event horizon, that would also recede. You can't get to a place where time stops. So, as that recedes, what you're seeing is a branching of the universe. Each galaxy is a branching of the universe in a new direction. And if you could approach the black hole, which you never could, if you could get close to it, you couldn't, because it would just recede away from you and open up into other universes, other galaxies. Now, isn't that a beautiful picture? But now I'm going to tell you something else. It's all evolving forward for you. That's because space-time originates with the awareness of being here now. And there is one but. And it's a horrible place to be. It's that space I showed you. Just a dark space and just time passing. I am that I am. A horrible place to be. But fortunately, it can imagine light. And out of light, it can imagine worlds. And then it incarnates itself into those worlds to escape its eternal loneliness and pass its eternity. All living things are that. And this is why we hate being bored and we fear loneliness. This is our essence. And we're finding this out during COVID. We don't like being home alone and bored. We want to be out. We want to be busy. And no matter how humble our work, we want to do it. Because it's the busyness that matters. It's the journey. Now then, back to some quantum tales. I showed you before, Site 1 today. Now, I'm going to pull out a poster. That was it in 1930, remember? Now I'm going to pull out a poster, so I don't have to hold my arms up in the air, and I'll tell you some quantum tales. I'll try not to jiggle you around too much as I move over here, where the posters are. Here we go. There we are. Okay. I'll pull out a stool. Set myself down right here. Okay. There we go. All right, now, most of the glass that you've seen in this video came from Site 1, which is the beach we're looking at right now. I had to kayak in there in an ocean kayak, they had patrols and all that in the headlands with Georgia Pacific on the land. You couldn't walk in. You could once or twice, they catch you, and then, you know, that was it. So, they called the cops. And the reason it was because even though you could be on the beach, if you got there legally, you didn't get there legally. You had to trespass to get there. So I got myself an ocean kayak to go in, and that's how I was going in, so they didn't bother me. And I would land my kayak underneath the dark cliff here. And one day I got out of my kayak, and right next to my kayak I found 2 marbles. Now, marbles are rare. 1 in 8,000 pieces maybe. And to find 2 together is remarkable. And I'm always talking to my greater self, because that's what's manifesting the universe for each of us. That's the Creator. And I address it as Lord. Now, it's not a man, it's not a woman, it's not male, it's not female, it's life itself. It's much more than we are. We are of it and from it, and we're all its children, and we're all one in it. But it's not anything you can describe as a thing. It's life itself. It's what leaves the body when the body is dead. Why the parts no longer work together right. Alright, so I address it as Lord, but that's just the way I address it. And I found these 2 marbles. I said, Lord, I said, thank you, Lord, oh my God, thank you. I said, that's great. I said, but Lord, I said, I've never found a red marble before. I found a blue marble, but never a red marble. I'd love to find a red marble. And I just went back picking. Well, it would take me about 2 hours to walk from where I found the marbles to where I was sitting here to take this picture, because I was going very slowly up and down the beach looking for the gems amongst all the other glass. And I got about here and I was tired and I wanted to go. But that beach stretches a little bit to the right. And I thought, well, I'll just make a quick pass and I'll see if there's anything big on top. And this is what I found when I got to the end of the beach. We have to go to the end of the room instead. I found that marble. Let's see. Give you a size idea. See if I can grab that. This is a Christensen marble. Christensen was the first guy to machine make marbles between 1906 and 1917. I don't think they're showing the light well in here, but it's a beautiful red. It's a Christensen bloody, or a Christensen slag, they call it. Has a little wave on it. And I started dancing around. I was saying, oh Lord, thank you, thank you, thank you, Lord God, thank you. And I bend down to pick it up. And on either side of it, right next to it, was a jewelry quality piece of red glass. Now, reds are 1 in 5,000 pieces. So, the chances of this happening are impossible, and it's beyond a synchronicity. It's just outright beautiful. Now, this is how the Creator speaks to me. You may think I'm crazy, but this is how it happens. And what the Creator said to me with this is not a coincidence. You asked for red and I gave you red. Now, I believe He did that. It did that. So I could tell you that story. Now, let's see, what should we go do? Let's go back over to the picture, because the next quantum tale happens there too. Because you see, this is how the quantum world works. It's always evolving around us for us as we live in it. Whether we see it or not, it's happening. When you move your arm, the universe evolves forward for you, so your arm ends up in the right place. Now, it doesn't matter whether you know it or not, because you're God's child. And the Creator loves you regardless. It loves Charles Manson as much as Jesus ben Joseph of Nazareth, who tried to tell people the same thing I'm telling you today. It's as simple as that. But it helps if you understand it, because then you can ask for something. If I didn't know I could ask and receive, I wouldn't have my red marble. That's the difference. Now, I was on the beach one day on here, and a family had come, I think legally, on a negative tide down the shoreline. You could get there legally along the shore on a negative tide. And they had a little girl of about 8 or 10 years old. And in 2 hours, she found 9 red pieces. Now, I would find a red once every 3 or 4 months, because when I walked the beach, I was just looking for whatever caught my eye, whatever was unusual amongst all the other glass. But she was looking specifically for reds, and she found 9 reds. One of them, I was coming up this way, and she came running up to talk to me, and after we finished talking, she looked down, and right between my feet, she picked up a piece like the ones I just showed you with the red marble. That's a $150 piece of glass. Now, I wanted to strangle that little girl, but of course I didn't. And later on in the day, I actually found a red, a nice one that had been heated, so the gold that gives red its luster, the bright red its luster, had separated out in flakes within the glass. Very interesting piece. Somebody stole, unfortunately. Anyway, so you see, she was looking, and so if you have a dream in your life, if you want to have a bakery, if you take the first step, you'll end up with a bakery, because the next step always appears. When I started out, I was doing this because I wanted a little bit of money to go play golf or something, because I had 2 girls in school, and I'm in college, and I'm on a pension, and they were keeping me tapped out. And I haven't played golf since I started doing it. Why? Because the next step kept appearing. I didn't find this beach for 3 years, but the next step always appeared. That's the way it works. So be as a little child, see? Now, let's see. What can I do here? I'm going to go into my book. These are some of the other beaches you can see. And I'm looking for above site 2. This is site 2. This is our prettiest beach now. And it still looks like this. It's always best after a storm or during high seas. Doesn't have to be a storm, just high seas. That log's been there forever. Rolls around, it just stays on the beach, nothing washes away. Okay. There's some more pretty pictures. Oh boy. Well, let's see, how can I say this so it makes sense? When I started selling, I was selling on the headlands, not at this end, but at the other end of the beach. That's where I ended up. The Rangers kicked me out of the park, and I ended up there. Some of my buddies. Okay. This little pelican guy. I don't think he made it. It was probably a chick. Most of the baby birds don't survive because they can't teach themselves how to hunt or scavenge for food. The seagulls have a very high mortality rate, as do the pelicans. Anyway, this way, up there on top of the headland there. That's where I was selling. And one day I was sitting there, and a fellow came along, and he says, what can I do? Where can I go? And I said, you can go down here behind me into the slag pile cove, which you can see here. This is the slag pile cove. And you see why it has a slag pile. And I said, you might find something, rare, like a red, because things break out of the slag pile. And he goes down. 15 minutes later, he comes up. He's got a beautiful red, like the ones I just showed you. $150 piece of glass, just beautiful. And I start laughing to myself because I know what's going on with him. And he says, he said, what can I do now? And I said, here's the slag pile cove. That's where he found the red. And I said, you can go down here behind me on the site 2, the main beach. I said, there's a lot of glass down there. That's it. And I said, you might find something really rare, like a red. Like a grape purple. I'm trying to get the glare off. Now, grape purple is like an orange. It's 1 in 10,000. And as I told you in the museum section, I found 4 in 10 years. 20 minutes later, he came back with a beautiful grape purple. And I just laughed and laughed to myself, because you see, the reason he found those things, the reasons they materialized for him in his world, is because he had the faith of that little girl. She found red because she believed she could. That's the way it works. Can't force it to be. You got to ask and look. And he found his red and his grape purple because he had faith in what I told him. He believed in me. Now that's the way it works. And I know about faith because when I was 22, I learned to wash my hands in acid harmlessly under a Muslim Hajj in Jakarta, Indonesia. And that sent me on my quest to learn the power of faith. I was an atheist at the time, a bitter atheist. But I had learned the power of faith because I did it both ways with that acid, with and without. When I did it the night that I did it, he told me as I was leaving, he said, you can't show this to the curious. You can do whatever you want, but it's not a circus act. You can't just show it to the curious. And the next morning, the person who had taken me to the Hajj to begin with brought a bunch of people for me to do it, and I had to do it because I didn't want him to lose face. I lost several layers of skin, very painfully. So I went searching for faith. And 2 years later, everything I'd studied, I studied all the great faiths. I read all their books. I was trying to figure out what the founders knew, not what they taught in the churches and the temples and all that, because it's all wrong. It's right, but it's so much error, terrible error. So I had an epiphany, and I entered that world of light I described to you. I asked for something, and I was trying different things. I was meditating, I was doing sensory deprivation, I was doing all these things to try to find what was within me. Why did everybody say, keep going, go within, know yourself, go within? Why, I wondered. And I go within myself, and all I found was me. And so finally, in frustration, I asked for something. There's a spark plug in the rocks, in the slag, see? And I got it. And I got it in a very dramatic way. Red marble way. And that's when I realized what was going on. And that's when I fell in love with my greater self. And I've been talking to my greater self and loving my greater self ever since. There's the slag pile cove, another angle up on the headland. So, we see that all of this is evolving forward for us, individually, each and every one. And this solves one of the big conundrums in quantum physics and astrophysics. And that's a thing called non-locality. If I have two electrons pass by each other here very closely, so they influence each other a little bit, and they take off in opposite directions across the universe, no matter how far apart they are, as soon as a person looks at this one and influences it, the other one also has to react immediately, has to change. And this is what they call non-localities. Instant communication over space and time. And they call the two observers Alice and Bob. Alice looks at one, then Bob has to see this at the other one. It's the only way it works. And they can't figure out why. Well, it's because we all come from the one. We're all the one's children. We're all one within it. And it harmonizes all our individual universes together, right down to the ant, to the virus, to COVID. Harmonizes all that together so it makes sense from every perspective, so we can interact. Just one. Now, earlier I was talking about dilation gradients and how energy is manifested. Time's going faster here than it is here. And so we don't just see an evolution forward in time this way, we also see an evolution down that gradient. And that's what gravity is. Alright, so when we look out into space, one of the big mysteries is why in galaxies the solar systems evolve faster the farther away they are from the center of the galaxy. Relativity supposedly says it should be the opposite way. It should be like our solar system, where closer objects go faster and farther objects go slower. And the reason is because they're not seeing this continuum. They're seeing the objects fall through space rather than evolving through a continuum, which is what's going on. Time's faster here, it's evolving down the continuum here. And this is what's happening too in the galaxies. The smaller, the galaxies get thinner as you go out from the center, and so that's less mass. Less mass evolves faster, and that faster evolution in time results in what we see as faster velocities around the center. But again, it's not moving around the center through space. It's all evolving forward together in the space-time continuum. And those just appear to be the motions that we see. So that takes care of dark matter. There's no more dark matter. And I explained about dark energy. It's not dark energy. It's our acceleration in time. And if you go outside and you look at any living thing, what I say will be reaffirmed. The 2.2 billionths of a second acceleration in the rate of time within us, within life, causes life to grow up against the direction of gravity, against the forward direction of time. If that's the acceleration showing itself. It's an acceleration relative to the rates of time going down. That's life manifesting itself. And it's not the particles, it's not godlessness, it's not you need something here or there that life came from. The life is everywhere. It's the universal cosmic consciousness. It's the creator. And everything comes from the life. The life doesn't come from the universe. When we die, you see a dead body. All the RNA is there, all the DNA is there, all the parts are still there. But there's no motion. The animation has left. The life. So, keep this in mind. You're God's child. That's you. And when you have faith, you have divine power. In faith, there is divine power. This is why we have miracles. This is why we have miracles. This is why I could wash my hands in acid one night without hurting it. And the next day, the next morning, burn layers of skin off my hands because in the one instance I had faith, and in the second instance I had doubt. So the best way to curry your faith, to make your faith grow, is to ask. Now, you see a lot of people praying like this, and they're trying to be humble while they're indulging their Holy Spirit. But it's fine, no matter how you talk to God. I talk to God all the time. I talk to the Creator. Right, Lord? And you see what I did? I looked up, not down. The Hindus call your third eye the Om. Alright? And it's a third eye because you're looking differently. And so, even the atheist, right? When the atheist says, "Oh God," where does he put his eyes? Right? So when I talk to the Creator, I like to do it like this. I don't always. I'll talk to the Creator looking at a book, playing poker. But for the most effect, my deepest feelings, I like to go like this. Hi, Lord. You see how that love came back through me? That's what they call rapture. It's a difficult place to stay because it's a very, very strong love. And I recommend that you do this alone in your room with the door closed, just like Jesus suggested. Don't do it in the temples amongst everybody muttering and babbling and repeating things over and over again, hoping it makes them holy. Repetitive prayers don't do anything except still your mind, like a mantra. The love of God is the loving of God. The loving of your greater self. And you can take that self everywhere with you. It's always with you. You don't have to go to church or temple to pray. You don't have to get on a telephone on a prayer line to pray and have people babble this and babble that. You talk from your heart. It already knows your heart. It's your greater self. Right, Lord? Thank you for my memorial. And don't forget to say thanks. So, I hope that gave you hope in this time of troubles. It's my constant companion. And I'm going to give you a little scan now of these pieces behind me. Right, because these are the most expensive pieces I have. And with that, we'll sum it up. And I'll put up a link at the end here while these pieces are viewing. And if you'd like to support the Sea Glass Museum and help keep it open, please go and make a donation. I'll have different amounts you can choose from. I haven't put it up yet. But there'll be a link to PayPal. These are not bad tears. These are good tears. They're the best. There's nothing as powerful as the love of God. Okay. So, here we go. Now, I've been teaching you about spirituality. That's not religion. I separate the two. Religion is what we do or don't do for our own health and the health of our community. Basically, it's the wisdom of our ancestors. If you wash your hands before you eat, you have religion. If you brush your teeth every day, you have religion. If you wipe your butt after you poop, you've got religion. So, when people tell me they're not religious, I always say, well, yes, you are. What they're meaning is they're not spiritual. They don't believe in the Creator. They don't spend any time loving the Creator. And they're pretty much just ignorant of the Creator, or they hate the Creator a lot. They hate the thought of it. I used to be like that. I was once a bitter atheist. That's stuff we can find on my websites and all that. But I separate the two. It's important, first of all, and most of all, to be spiritual. And then religion makes that better. But people who are killing each other over religion are terrible. They're lost souls. They're killing their brothers. They're killing God's children. One will never annihilate the other. All they do is perpetuate misery and suffering for themselves and those they're in blood feuds with, or murdering in cold blood. So that's what I'd like to say about that. And I'll warn everybody against one other thing. Gluttony. You don't hear your preachers or your rabbis or anybody anymore talking about gluttony. Gluttony is the worst of the deadly sins, an overindulgence in God's goodness. The world is meant to be savored, not pigged out on. And the Creator has very strong inducements, so it doesn't lose itself too far here. It loses itself in this world, but it doesn't want to be totally lost, so it ends up in the hell that you go to when you overindulge in these good things. And if He allowed it, they would soon be meaningless. You eat steak every day, after a while you don't even want to see it. So, I caution you all to enjoy God's good earth, enjoy your lives, enjoy the bounty, enjoy the human spirit, love each other as brothers and sisters, because that's what you are. Stop the slaughter, stop the gluttony, stop the licentiousness. What we are all doing here is passing God's eternity. That's what we're doing. And if you pass it well, then you're in God's heaven. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. All you have to do is pick it up. And it lies within you. Don't look over here. Don't look over there. And don't be looking for the kingdom after you die. Why would the Creator want to keep any of us around for eternity when it is escaping its own hell here? And I leave you with that, my friends. God bless you all. And donate, please. There's a button below, or somewhere on this page. Please help keep the Sea Glass Museum alive. Thank you. Bye-bye.